go!
Day 5 of quarantine, Premier Planet, but we're coming at you with another episode of the Premier Planet podcast. We hope you're all staying safe out there during these very difficult times.
Especially me. I got 1 foot in the grave and 1 foot in a banana peel.
Yeah, but with all the stuff you've been through in your life, if that didn't take you down, I think you're pretty much indestructible at this point.
I survived my childhood, you're right.
Yeah.
And my ex-wife.
And raising 3 children.
Yeah, so...
daughters at that.
Let's go ahead and cover our revenue streams, if you would.
Absolutely.
Since we're on Patreon, first thing we got to do is give all kind of propers for anybody that's subscribing. Second thing is, if you're watching this on YouTube, we still appreciate the hell out of your support on YouTube. The views are priceless.
Absolutely. And in the midst of all the bad news we've been getting around the globe, we got some great news this last week because we made it halfway to our next goal, and we passed 35,000 subscribers. We're halfway to 4,000.
I'll take it.
Yeah, and we were saying we wanted to get to 40,000 by the summer. It looks like we're going to blow that expectation out of the water. It only took 3 months for us to get 5,000 extra subscribers.
You know, I don't know if it's superstition or being realistic, but I don't want to get cocky.
No,
you know
but there's a difference between being cocky and being confident.
Yeah, exactly. Ty Cobb used to say, not Ty Cobb, Ted Williams used to say, it's not bragging if it's true.
Mm-hmm. You know? And I believe, and everybody's familiar with Dolph Ziggler, who said it's not showing off if you can back it up.
And there's also, Ty Cobb said, since we're playing Can You Top This, the quest for glory is not a sin.
Well, you're right, I can't top that.
6 of one, half dozen of the other. So, where can they support us if they're watching us on YouTube right now? Maybe they're not aware of Patreon.
Yeah. If you're watching this on Patreon or YouTube, first of all, again, thank you for your support, whichever platform you're watching us on that. If you're watching this on YouTube and you're not already a part of Patreon, it's as simple as going to patreon.com/Premier Pro Wrestling. And I guess it's as good a time as any to go over the tiers again. I know I do this a lot, but it always bears repeating.
Yeah.
$1 a month gets you the Premier Planet podcast a week before it airs on YouTube, so you're actually going to be able to stay current on the Premier Planet podcast because we post these the same week we record them, but if you wait until YouTube, you're going to be a week behind, and some of the information might be out of date, and it's completely ad-free, all for $1 a month, and we shoot one of these every single week, so that's between 4 and 5 podcasts a month.
And then what's the next one?
At $3, it's going to get you that, plus 2 exclusive matches from our Patreon exclusive Friday night studio tapings, which right now are on hold, but they won't be on hold forever. So $3 a month gets you the podcast a week early and 2 exclusive matches from those Friday night tapings. And at $5, you get the podcast and those once a month Friday tapings in their entirety. Every match on those Friday night cards.
Now, again, if you watch us on YouTube or Pivot Share, we got t-shirts coming out of our ass sideways on Pro Wrestling Tees. How can they hook up with those?
Well, there's 2 ways you can do it. You can either go directly to Pro Wrestling Tees or
Premier
Pro Wrestling. ProWrestlingTees.com/Premier Pro Wrestling, or you can go to our official website at PremierProWrestling.com. Click the t-shirt link. I believe it either says t-shirts or merchandise, but click that link. That'll link you up with Pro Wrestling Tees, and you can shop from our store that way.
We've also got subscription.
Our PPW On Demand. I'm going to call it On Demand because apparently I don't want to say subscription today.
On Demand's better. People understand that more.
If you go to our official website, PremierProWrestling.com again, go up in that little search bar up there, click on, I believe it's labeled as On Demand. It'll take you to a page, and below that, you can click a link, and you can sign up for 2 free weeks just for joining us on that platform.
It's $4.99 a month, and I'm pretty damn sure I can still claim this and also be right. We have the most content on most of them on Pivot Share. I think almost all of them on Pivot Share as we do weekly tapings.
At new content every single week for less than $5 every month. And the streaming is unlimited. You're not going to hit a wall where it says, oh no, you've streamed too much this month. You have to wait till next month. The streaming's unlimited. If there's a match you really like and you want to watch it 20 times, watch it 20 times.
Another good selling point that I wasn't thinking about. Enough pimping, let's get to the content. So I was thinking today, one of the things that's always bothered me in this industry, and I don't know if I can say it like I used to say it, I'm just going to say it. What I used to refer to as, I'm not going to say it because I don't want anybody pissed off at me, even though I don't mean the words. You can't say today what you could say in 1990 something. You understand what I'm saying?
This is true.
So that being said, and I'm not going to call them gay, and I think a lot of people from my era and before make that mistake and thinking that they're gay, but what's always bothered me is the whole that these predators, and that's what they were, that's what they are, is predators in the business. How much control they had over town, who gets hired, who doesn't get hired, who goes over, who doesn't go over, who means something, who doesn't mean something. Because at the end of the day, you're messing with people's pay. The higher you're up in the card in the history of pro wrestling, the more money you make. And everybody is scrambling and working their asses off to try to get ahead in this business and to get a name. And it's a sad, sad thing when you've got people just like in Hollywood or music that'll try to use, and I'm not going to call it gay, that'll try to get a straight person to interact with them in a homosexual manner. That's not gay to me, that's a predator. You know, to abuse their power to try to do so. And I can't go into detail yet, but someday I want to, or someday I want somebody that actually has seen some of this stuff happen, because I know they're out there. I know a couple of old timers that said before they die, they're going to spill the beans on a lot of people. And there's going to have to be a lot of people to answer for that. But what I will say is they were all over the industry when I broke in, even in 1988, 89, 88, I don't know when I broke in. They were all over. Puerto Rico, Mexico, Japan, the territories, World Wrestling Federation, you know, AWA. You know, the things I've personally experienced are mind-blowing, and they always turn my stomach. And I'm not the only guy that's been that way. And what brought this on was I stumbled upon Roddy Piper today. And everybody wants to talk about that shoot interview and look for the worst. But I don't think anybody ever followed Roddy's podcast, his follow-up, you know, retorting to that. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? I think people need to, because at the end of the day, Roddy was about to step up there and belt it out, but for some political reason he didn't. And he was a guy, if he wouldn't have died unexpectedly of those complications, that was a 61 years old, I think he was a guy that had enough juice, common sense, and integrity to really name names. Mm-hmm. You know, and those people should be outed. I mean, look at what's finally happening with, you know, Harvey Weinstein. I mean, let's see what happens in Hollywood. I haven't heard much of that since, so it doesn't seem to have the focus or be taken as seriously as it should be. But it was gross, man. It was real sick, and I know what I know. And I know from first-hand experience, and I know some old-timers, one in particular, that everybody in the industry loves. You know, loves. And I'm going to go ahead and say his name, but I'm not going to say the name of the predator just yet. When I broke into this business and I started to get my first push, or my babyface push at the old USWA territory, Handsome Jimmy Valiant was amazing to me. He was so good to me, running the roads with Jimmy, spending 24/7 with Jimmy. Everybody loves Jimmy Valiant. Everybody in the industry loves Jimmy Valiant. If you bring his name up with the big stars today, or if he went up to a WWE locker room today, everybody would lose their minds for him, including Vince McMahon Jr. You know, Vince McMahon loved Jimmy Valiant. Jimmy is a guy, is a perfect example of how to live life. He never lets anything get to him too much. He finds the humor and the bright side in everything. And this guy's sense of humor and charisma, I mean, you got to be born with gift like that, because it wasn't just on television. He is like that everywhere he goes. I've never seen Jimmy lose his mind before. I've never seen him talk ill of anybody. I'm a hothead. When I was younger, I was a hotter head. Jimmy just actually talked me down last year from a resentment I was hanging on to for a couple of years against another old timer in the industry that fucked me over. But Jimmy just says, just like this, hey man, people are fallible. You know, people make mistakes. And you know what Jimmy did? He reminded me of a time I made a mistake with him. I fucked Jimmy over. He said, brother, I love you. I love you. I know you didn't mean to. But what good would it have done for me to hang on to it? Now, Jimmy's been a resource I've gone to for a long, long time. And I had something sticking in my quad that was really bothering me. Somebody blatantly fucked me over that I looked up to and respected. And I'm broke and I needed the money. And it was a effing multi-million-dollar idea stolen. And then pearls were cast before swine. And it was handed to somebody that didn't know what to do with the goddamn idea. But anyway, that is what it is, and obviously I'm still struggling with it. but not like I was. I don't think about it on a daily basis after Jimmy kind of talked me down, you know what I mean? But anyway, point I'm trying to make is Jimmy was all about integrity and love, and what a character. I mean, you see how he come into the ring, hugging fans. I mean, one of the first guys to come through the crowd, first guy to do that in pro wrestling, you know what I mean? Dancing, making people dance with him, kissing fucking people. Kissing people. Some of those fans I wouldn't have kissed. Jimmy kissed them. Jimmy was full of love. So this guy, he comes in, and you know, I'm in the territory, and the territory is starting to really take a downturn. We're working every night, but we're not making what we were. The houses were down, the primary houses. Memphis was down, way down. Louisville was way down. Evansville was way down, and all parts in between were way down, you know, when I got there. So you're struggling. It's a struggle. And you got to be resourceful in how you're going to travel. You got to be resourceful in how you're going to eat. You got to be way beyond resourceful how you're going to live. How am I going to do my laundry? Where am I going to stay when I'm on the Memphis side of the territory, when I'm on the Nashville side of the territory? And thank God I had friends, real friends, that took us in and helped us and took care of us and gave us places to stay, clean, safe, kept their bellies full on the Memphis end of the territory and the Nashville side of the territory. But all that being said, one of the Predators came in, and Jimmy and I had never talked about that before, and I've been a couple of rounds with a few of them, you know, and this guy was pretty low on the food chain, or pretty low on the totem pole of these Predators. But in the same token, he was one of those Predators that would communicate with the top Predators. They all knew each other, and they all checked in with each other from top to bottom, from Puerto Rico to Connecticut, from Mexico to Connecticut, from Mexico to Puerto Rico, from Mexico to Japan, I almost gave it up. From Puerto Rico to Japan. You know what I'm saying? They all checked in with each other and said, ooh, I got this new guy. He's beautiful. I'll let you know if he plays. You know what I mean? So this guy came in, and I was listening to his BS. You know what I mean? Oh, how are you? Oh, you love I haven't seen you since, you know what I mean? That kind of stuff. I've always been a big mark of yours. Ooh, you know what I mean? And they're relentless. And, you know, I humor them. You know, I'm still to the point where I'm getting a clue, but in the same token, you can't piss anybody off. There's some inappropriate, but nothing too bad. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing for me to react to, and I've got to play my cards right because you just don't know who you're going to piss off. At some point, you go like this. This is what I've got my heart and soul put into. This is what I grew up loving and wanting to do someday. Now you've got time invested, and I'd say I probably had about 4 or 5 years invested in the industry at the time. So you don't want to make too many enemies or punch the wrong person because that will kill your career off. Now you got time invested into the dream. So I'm learning how to set boundaries. You know what I mean? And I'm listening to the bullshit, and the bullshit is definitely shit that you could not get away with saying or asking today, you know? But he's trying to insinuate that I could stay at his beautiful place. He's house sitting right next door to Big Country Star in Hendersonville. And oh, I'm a great cook. You love the way I prepare this, that, and the other. And I'm making this or that tomorrow night if you want to come over. You know what I mean? And you're freaking going, yeah, man. I mean, on one hand, a nice warm meal would be great. It sure would be a hell of a lot better than staying where we got to stay, which would be the Congress Inn, which should have been foreclosed on and shut down and condemned, or the Admiral Benbow in Memphis 20 years before we were staying there. You know what I'm saying? But in the same token, you go, no, man, I know what's attached to that. I'm going to turn around and see a big pile of genitalias or something. You know what I mean? So I'm sitting there, I'm listening, I'm humoring, and I'm trying to get on to doing business, you know? So then all of a sudden, out of the blue, this guy grabs my nipples and giggles like a girl, and Handsome comes flying into the locker room. Get the fuck out of here, you bitch. I'm going to knock you the fuck out. And the guy runs, I'm like, holy shit, Handsome. You know what I mean? I never seen him act like that to another person. And I'll guarantee you, any old timers that happen across this, or you happen across, ask him, because Handsome don't react like that. But he actually got protective over me because he was so sick and tired of that bullshit, and the fact that the guy actually did fucking love me. And I'm like, Boogie, I got this, I dealt with this one and that one already. He's nothing compared to them. You know what I mean? So, I mean, it's got to be said, and someday somebody will go into detail. Maybe I'll go into detail anyway and name names and all that stuff. But how sick is that shit?
That's ridiculous.
I know.
Absolutely ridiculous.
I've literally been told, ooh, if you'll play, I'll call so-and-so World Wrestling Entertainment and I'll have you on television in 3 weeks. But you gotta be able, he's gotta know that you'll play. You know what I'm saying? That kind of shit.
No.
I wouldn't play. You know, I don't care how hard up I was. I'd rather sleep under a dumpster than play. You know?
That's disgusting. I mean, it's, oh man. I can't imagine trying to pursue a career you're passionate about and having to come up against that.
Well, the politics were hard enough as it was, not having to deal with that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And back then, just trying to hold on to your spot.
The other thing is too, and I don't think a lot of people to this day even mention, okay, it's 2020 and everybody can pretty much be who they want and identify as whatever the fuck they want. But that wasn't gay. See, they're the kind of people that made society afraid of gays. And they're not, in fact, that's not gay to me. That might be a homosexual preference, but that's a predator. And it makes everybody look bad. In the gay community, in the hetero community, when there's people like Weinstein and all that stuff, that's a predator. You know, and I think that a lot of times, maybe the gay community, as it gains more power, might start addressing this type of stuff too, because it does make the LGBTQ look bad as well.
Well, it does need to be addressed. I mean, absolutely. And I mean, a predator is a predator no matter how you splice it. Yeah. Even if they're offering you some great reward for playing, as you put it, I mean, even if you get something that you want, I mean, you got to live with that the rest of your life.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I've been on the road with some in the car, and then out of the blue, I'll give you $100 just to let me play with your wiener for 2 minutes. You can watch your clock, and for $100, and you're going, shit, I'm making $300. I mean, he just wants to play with it. I ain't going to get hard or nothing. Wait, what am I thinking? Hell to the no. You know what I'm saying? How am I going to live with myself after? I'll give you $200 for 2 minutes. No, 100 wasn't enough. 200 is not enough. I'll give you a carton of cigarettes. I'll buy you dinner and give you $200. Motherfucker, stop it. You're not getting a hold of my dick.
Jeez.
You get your ass slapped. That's happened all the time. I mean, I hear women, and I understand women get pissy about it, but they used to do that shit all the time. Just in one ear, out the other, let it go. But at the end of the day, until you stop and think about how serious that shit is, and I know guys that were more talented than the same era as I'm going to tell you right now. I'm not going to say names. There was a guy, and AJ will admit it if I said the guy's name. I know AJ because I worked with AJ at TNA, and he knows this kid. He knows how talented this kid was. This kid wasn't stupid by any stretch of the imagination. We were all going in and doing this WCW R&B security and WCW security, and we kidnapped Ric Flair's old lady, and we'd guard Goldberg to the ring and all that crap at the time. I was working on getting my company a WCW developmental deal. AJ was looking to get hired and looked at. He was just a kid. Now, there was a kid that used to come in with us that, I'm not going to say his name, was even more talented than AJ. You know, and AJ will admit it. I'm telling you right now. He came from a small town where they probably, honest to God, it's hard for a lot of people to believe in 2020, but some of these towns, they lived without running water. They lived without paved roads. You know, we're talking about probably even up till 1990. You know what I'm saying? They had electricity, but sometimes they didn't have electricity and had to operate with a generator. He was country as it comes. There was no Walmarts. There was no internet. They didn't get cable TV, and cell phones weren't invented. You know what I mean? If they were new, and it was this kid, way beyond his comprehension he would ever own one. That's how country this kid was. He was so talented. And these predators from this certain part of the country took such advantage of this kid, okay? We'll train you for free. We'll see to it that you're trained for free. So he starts getting trained. They book him in matches before he can work because the kid could dance. But the kid could move probably more athletically than AJ Styles. Probably more athletically than what's the kid's name that's in NXT? The Demon.
Oh, Finn Balor.
Finn Balor. I mean, his moves, I'm not kidding, were innovative. Things you've never seen before. But during his training, someone convinced him that you got to let me put a thumb up your ass. You got to let me put a thumb up your ass. It's okay. All the guys in wrestling had to go through it. Now, again, not a stupid individual, okay, but a country and naive individual who never heard of anything like that. So he had to ask himself, and they are relentless. They are relentless. I've seen them be relentless like you wouldn't believe. I mean, even on me, to try to get that sick control. Well, he was probably 17, 18 at the time when this happened, and he allowed it to happen. Couldn't live with it. By the time that WCW heard of him and what he could do, and he was there, I don't think he had any matches because of what happened. He was already fucking, I mean, he was on dope because of what he fell for early on. And I don't know whatever happened to him. I don't know whatever happened to him. But that kid was a friggin' mess. You know, he was a friggin' mess. We did that shit for 6 months, a year. I don't remember how long. I liked it because it paid $500 a night. But I also liked it because I was networking my way into getting a WCW developmental deal. This kid wouldn't party. He would just go get so fucked up himself, by himself. He was not outgoing anymore. You saw the switch. You saw the change over time. He didn't have the sense to change planes. So I'd help him and say, come on, which one are you on? Look at his ticket. I mean, that's how fucked up he would be. And that's as a result of this shit. And I'm telling you, man, if I said that name, AJ will go, I remember him, what happened to him, and you're goddamn right. He was more talented because he was. You know, and that's why I wanted to address it. Just sickening.
Well, you know what?
But, you know, I'm not full of shit. Look at these fucking goosebumps. This is how I feel about the shit. Are these fucking goosebumps chicken skin or what?
Those are legit. And I mean, if we had, you know, the HD, whatever it is, and the zoom capability, I would say bring the camera in here to take a look at this.
You think I'm full of shit? You should see those fucking goosebumps that he'll witness. This is the shit that happened. I'd love to name names, and someday, motherfuckers, I will. And the motherfuckers aren't your viewers. It's the motherfuckers that are going to stumble across this. See, what's going to happen is one of this unholy gaggle is going to hear that I talked about it, and they're going to pass it on and bury me. You know? I don't give a shit because I got nothing to lose anymore. I got nobody to impress. And today's business ain't got no fucking room for you.
Yeah, and it's a difficult, I mean, difficult's probably an understatement, but it's such a difficult thing to address because it happened. And it probably continues to happen for all we know.
And now that we're talking, I don't know if it happens so much anymore, honest to God. You know,
I would hope there'd be a lot more oversight.
It won't happen at WWE. It does not happen at WWE, you know. But, and I don't think it happens because some of these people have passed on. Most of your heavy hitters have passed on. The one, the queen, the chief, the head of the unholy gaggle is still knocking around. But due to circumstances beyond his control, he'll never have that power again. You know, there's another kid that I'm not going to mention his name, from that same area, and it's the South, just past the Mid-South. Same thing. He was a gifted athlete. And I'm not going to say as more talented than AJ. I would say 2/3 as talented as AJ, but he was a little smaller. But he's a good-looking kid who had a bright future, too. Same thing with him. He was ruined from that shit. And these are guys that, I'm telling you, they were on the same level as AJ. And when they opened up TNA, when they were scouting, when Jerry Jarrett was scouting talent, they were going to build total nonstop action around AJ Styles. These guys were going to be guys that would work with AJ because they worked with AJ since they were teenagers, but the world hadn't seen that yet. You know what I'm saying? So maybe if some of these things hadn't happened and these guys hadn't tripped out, you know, this business could have been affected by it. You know what I mean? In a positive way.
Yeah. And something like that, the victimization thing, I mean, you not only lose, you know, a person in that, you lose their talent, you lose what they bring to the table, like the one kid you were talking about who couldn't live with himself.
No, and they dehumanized them.
Yeah, and it's such a difficult thing to talk about, and we really appreciate you folks watching through this, but it has to be talked about. These things have to be talked about. And again, he's not naming names. I wasn't around for any of it, so I can't give my spin or anything on it.
For attention either, but it's one of those things that I think should be talked about because a lot of your top stars, and someday, I know Marty Jannetty is a good person, a good man, and a great worker. The guy doesn't age. Someday I think it's going to be him that comes out and names names.
Well, I hope so. I mean, somebody has to. So be it him, be it you writing a book, or whoever. And some of these, what'd you call them, old timers? I don't want to call them old timers.
No, it's okay. That's not offensive, and I say it with all the respect in the world. I'm talking about the guys that are 2 generations before me.
Yeah. And
You know?
the guys who are, as you like to term it, 1 foot in the grave and got nothing left to lose.
I'm not going to say that.
Well,
know?
I didn't mean it in an offensive way, but
I know you didn't.
guys who, you know, somebody, whoever it is, somebody has to speak up about this stuff. And we've scratched the surface here about this. And
now I know what I know, okay? And since we're on that topic, this isn't my generation experienced the shit, but these talents are like not my father, but my grandfather. They're 2 generations. Now I know what I know, and it's always been hard to deal with. I've never witnessed anything and never said nothing. I can't do that. You know, I didn't witness it. I wasn't in the same place when this stuff was happening to other people, but I'm very well aware of it, and I've got personal accountings from these human beings. You know what I mean? But the point I'm trying to make is I've been told my mind would be blown if I knew how deep this shit really runs.
And that's what's scary.
And people
that's what's really
that
scary.
I knew then and I knew well were involved.
And that's the truly frightening thing, is not knowing how deep this thing runs. And if you look at it, predation, I mean, in a way, it still continues, especially in indie wrestling. It may not be of that nature, but you have these promoters who, you know, say, "Oh, you know, come on in, and we'll train you, and you know, we'll send you to the stars." And then what do? They put the kids in the ring with them, and they just use them to get over.
Well, not just that, but then what they'll do is, and this is what I was thinking too, but we'll go on this more in depth another time about that climate. Think of the women wrestlers.
Oh yeah.
I know area wrestlers in the Chicago area where they have promoters told this young girl that I'm not going to book you anymore unless you're my girlfriend. Girlfriend, my ass, man. It's just a kind way of saying that he wants to do the same shit to her that people want to do to me. You know what I'm saying? People have done to the people I'm talking about. I don't know what happened from that, but I know for a fact, I'm not making any false claim. You know, I can trace it to this, to that heard it and saw it, it was there, you know. Sources that I trust and known for a long time. But, so we can take it off of this dark note, because I'm creeping myself out right now. I'm thinking about it. Let's go
what
ahead.
did I say? It's got to be talked about.
Yeah, it's got to be talked about. But let's close this thing on a high note. And the high note is this. Did you know that, and I used to work for TNA Impact Wrestling when it was in Nashville, and I worked for the Carters, Dixie, and all that crap. Did you know that that company was almost called SEX, Sports, I can't remember this shit.
The first time I'm hearing about it.
Oh man, Sports Extreme something with the X, but they wanted to be called SEX. And this is one of Russo's brilliant ideas.
Of course it was.
Sports, it'll come to me. But instead they settled at TNA. And TNA, let's face it, what they were looking for was people that were scrolling on was then your channel guide or your TV guide and see, oh, TNA, what's that? SEX, ooh, all the men are going to turn to that.
Let's go watch a little TNA, fellas.
Well, at the time you had Jerry Jarrett, Jeff Jarrett, and you had the Carters involved. The Carters and Jeff liked Russo. Jeff knew where to put Russo and what Russo's true gifts are. Nobody formats television or scripts television better than Vince Russo. But as far as creative goes, he's always had somebody, when he ever had any success with creative,
Filter.
was somebody to rein that guy in. Well, they put him in charge to try to hand that to him. So you got the Carters behind them. Then you got Jeff and Jerry going, okay, we do have to move into the 2000s, but in the same token, we don't want that. So here we are with all this crazy infrastructure and crazy stories. I'll get into something you wouldn't believe how these millionaires, people with money, oh my God, even some of that stuff wasn't the predatory bullshit. But anyway, then you've got guys like that, and you've got guys like Dutch Mantell or Zeb Coulter, as some of you people might know him. One of the best minds in the industry, and one of the reasons I went ahead and worked for TNA, because when I went to work there, I didn't go to work there because I wanted to or because I was a mark. I had things that I was pursuing that were going very well, and I was adding to those things. One of the reasons I went to work there was, one, $90,000 salary, great insurance benefits because I have a special needs kid, and also because I could be stimulated by the likes of Dutch Mantell and Jim Cornette. And I got to work very close with Dutch. I worked with Dutch in Memphis. I worked with Dutch in the ring in Memphis. I worked with Dutch when Dutch had the book on more than one occasion. Very smart. What he did in Puerto Rico for IWA was unbelievable with his ideas. His ideas are very simple. So he wasn't real excited about that TNA name either, even though it was not total nonstop action. It's not what they intended. It was to get people to watch for shock value. And guess what? Ever since Howard Stern went on Sirius, there's no more shock value. Shock value is dead. As dead as hardcore wrestling. You know what I mean? So, Dutch and I used to fly together. And what's cool is Dutch's legs bow like Yosemite Sam's from all these years in the industry. Because that he gets to board the plane first. Dutch is the type, if you're with Dutch, you get to board with Dutch because he's going to push and get, this guy's with me, so we get on the planes together. I used to fly down a day early than I had to go to the studio in Orlando, and Dutch would come down a day early to gather his thoughts and figure out what he was going to do. So we'd start riding together. It was pretty cool. So one day Dutch says to me, I have an idea, I want to bounce off you. We talked about the name and how it cheapens the industry and sets the business back, which it did. I don't want to work for something like that. I wanted for something with a future in it. You know what I mean? I wanted a viable alternative to Vince that we knew damn well when we were getting a 1-1, 1-2 as an average rating, that you guys wanted that because that's a formidable goddamn television rating, which is what TNA was or Impact Wrestling was at its peak. You know what I mean? Randy, do you think that there are beautiful women out there that can wrestle that aren't tits and ass? You would know better than I would because Dutch had spent all that time in Puerto Rico and I had a better pulse on who was available on the indies or available in the country. And I was like, oh, hell yeah. And I see what you're saying. Get them to tune in for that TNA and then give them the knockouts. Beautiful women that weren't being exploited. They were hot. But in the same token, we weren't doing that. We weren't doing negligee battle royals and, you know, they weren't showing their boobs while someone rolled someone up. Real chicks that could wrestle. I was like, hell yes, you know, and that's where it started. And that's where it starts with Dutch. Luke Williams likes to book talking into a microphone, into a tape recorder. Dutch books with a notebook, you know, and that's what we did. For weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, we would make that Orlando trip together, just he and I. We would talk, he would write, we would nap, we would eat, we would talk, he would write, you know what I mean? And that's how we kept going. So we get it to the point finally where he goes, you know what I'm thinking about calling this is? The Knockouts. And I'm like, that's freaking awesome. And it was awesome. Now, he started asking my opinion on some girls, you know, and I knew some girls, you know. And he started asking me opinion, what do you think that they would want to come in, you know, to try out? See, that's what we did finally, and you could check the books on this one. Dutch taught me a couple of things. One, I didn't learn from, is that I cared too much. I can't do business any other way, I'm sorry, and it is wrong. It fucks me in every turn. The other thing was, what was the other fucking thing? Hang on a second. It's better to ask for forgiveness than permission, i.e., and you can look it up in the history books, man. When I brought in Judas Macias, El Muertes, what did they call him for TNA Impact? Judas Macias.
It was Judas Macias.
El Macias, Ricky Banderas from Puerto Rico. I brought him into TNA. They didn't even know he was coming. When they got to the building, Dixie asked me, who's that? With her hand on her hip and her chicken neck going. You know what I'm saying? I did them such a favor with that shit because I was able to get Ricky to come to work for him when he was the top heel in Mexico. He was supposed to work with Abyss because he could control Abyss and make Abyss look better than Abyss could make Abyss look because he was stepping on his own dick. And I'm not being mean by saying so. And also then, which had never been done, there was already enough interest in the Latino world and the Latino world that understood English. IWA Puerto Rico, check the books, 850,000 fans a year. No, $850,000 a year. And then his fucking notoriety in Mexico, he was going to finish that second year off working with Sting.
Yeah.
Tell me I'm kidding that you people would pay to see that. You know what I'm saying?
And I remember as a fan, when Ricky came in as Judas Macias,
All me,
He
including the trap door, the safe trap door. I had a safe trap door built. I helped build that son of a bitch.
And people say, I heard people say right after it happened, it was a rip-off of what The Undertaker had done in the 90s. No, it wasn't. This guy comes up through the mat. He's got those, I think he had like the milky white lenses. And as soon as his mouth gets over the canvas, it starts oozing blood.
That
it was a sight
in Puerto Rico forever.
It was a sight to behold. And Abyss at that time, he was really running hot. He was really getting pushed. And just from looking at Ricky, before Ricky even laid hands on Abyss, you knew Abyss was in deep shit.
And there was money in this. There was big money in this. And this isn't me ripping on Abyss because I like Abyss. He's a nice guy. But at the end of the day, the animals can't run the zoo. I do better when someone else is booking me creatively, when all I have to think about is the mind meld with the guy or guys I'm working and that agent and that referee, and that's all we were trying to do for Abyss. But he was afraid that somebody was going to come in and take over and make him look like shit, and that was not the focus whatsoever. No. That was not the focus whatsoever. We wanted to elevate him, Dutch and I, and Chris, if you were watching this, Abyss, if you're watching this, Prince Justice, I mean, if you're watching this, you could get with Dutch and see. Our only intention was to get you over and to make you not be a generic Mick Foley anymore, because you were better than that, you were bigger than that, you were more athletic than that. Okay? So anyway, let's get off that topic for a second and go back to the knockouts. How much do we got to pay him, Rand? He wanted to bring in 4 or 6 of them and not tell anybody until they were there. You know what I mean? And I forget which ones were the first ones that he brought in, but I said, let's do this, okay? We keep talking about wanting to do this and do that and compete. Here's where it starts. World Wrestling Entertainment was paying extras, or people that come in and work a dark match, or people come in and get a tryout, $250, you know? Which, whatever, it was that was fair. If you're not a contract employee, that was fair.
$250 is $250.
I says, let's pay the girls $350 more and get their hotel on the deals that we got the hotels with, which were cheap, and pair them up. That makes it affordable. And when that axe falls and somebody asks with their hand on their hip, chicken neck, and who that is, very simple, because you can go ahead and say that we spent 4 times 3, $1,200, a total of $2,000. Well, remind them of the $5,000 I saved them last week, and that'll soften the fucking blow. See what I'm saying? They couldn't look out for themselves, and we were trying to look out for them. And at the end of the day, what ended up happening was he did take my advice on some talent. We did the first tryout, a TNA tryout at the studio in Orlando, and that also produced cheerleader Melissa, who was coming out with Awesome Kong at first, helping her get over.
Raisha Saeed, I think.
Raisha Saeed. She's got another name too. Really nice girl. Her dad was a worker at some point that got out of the business and got into real business. And also another gal that I don't want to talk about right now that managed somebody there for a while. But what Dutch stumbled upon via Samoa Joe was something that had never been done before in wrestling, which is unbelievable at that point. And what are we talking about? 2006 and 7. Awesome motherfucking Kong, Kaya, an angel, a church lady, a true Christian. But god damn it, I'll be damned if she wasn't as big as and didn't work like a motherfucking road warrior. And you can check the books on this too. Fucking factotum my ass all day long on Reddit or wherever the fuck people do that shit. The highest rated segment in TNA wrestling was finally when Gail Kim and Awesome Kong met on Impact. It was the second highest rated programming at what was then Spike TV, only to Kimbo Slice fighting on The Ultimate Fighter that season. You know what I'm saying? So that being said, is we were going to create a lot of opportunity for girls that were not getting harassed, that nobody was trying to finger blast or get into their fucking pants, because Dutch would have me on that, and I would have feelers on that too, that nobody's going to engage in shit that they weren't getting involved in. There wasn't going to be no predatory bullshit, because let's face it, that was our bread and butter. So at the end of the day, what ends up happening is instead of when Dixie signed these women, okay, Dixie signs these women and signs them to $300 a fucking night, which was only supposed to be for the fucking tryout. Now, I can show you segments if I looked in the back, and I used to do it every week. I'd blog about it. I used to get 1,000 uniques, 1,000 uniques a day on my blog. I used to break down the segments of Impact when they brought in Hogan, and I would look at this whole fucking thing over here and go, they're paying $60,000 here for this segment, which drew a .06. Now we're talking about this match with just the girls, not even Gail and Kong, that was drawing a 1-4. Okay, 2 girls 600, all these assholes 60,000. They were getting almost half less than the girls were getting. You tell me what the fuck's gonna happen with that business plan. So at the end of the day, that's one thing that I feel good about. I'm not gonna say that I incepted that shit on my own, because I fucking didn't. You know, under the tutelage and ideas of Dutch, we put that shit together ourselves. And it was to take female wrestling to a whole nother level. They used to consider female wrestlers and treat them like shit, just a little bit more entertaining than dwarfs, or what they used to call midgets. The way they used to treat them, the way they used to talk to them would make you sick. But we wanted to change all that. Changing with the fucking times. The Knockouts were the first time women's wrestling had been considered and taken seriously, and they were treated like athletes, like the boys. And look what the fuck happened, and look fast forward to what it's spawned into today. And that's no bullshit, because Vince wasn't doing it yet either.
No, and in the mid-2000s, look at what Vince was doing with his female athletes, and look what TNA was doing with theirs.
Yeah.
You had your divas, and you had your knockouts.
Exactly, and you had poor Finley trying to teach girls that were non-wrestlers how to wrestle. God bless him for making sense that he did make out of that stuff. But these chicks, I mean, I can't remember all the names. There's Angelica this, and I can't remember all the names, just because that's how I am with the age and all that stuff, that were beautiful women that could wrestle. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
And it's, when you have an environment that can bring that out. I mean, take a look at Trish Stratus. Trish Stratus came in as a valet. She came in as eye candy and became, I don't know if she's had the most reigns of any women's champion, but she's had a career that spanned 20 years.
Well, didn't she have an athletic background? I know she was at least a fitness model.
She was a fitness model. She was, I'm sure she, you know, played sports and all that, but she came in, she was a valet for, it was Test and Albert, TNA.
Sure.
But she came in as a valet, but she worked her butt off, and look at where it got her. Because she could focus, she could listen. She developed herself into a genuine in-ring performer, and now look at her, she's in the Hall of Fame. She's considered arguably to be the greatest women's wrestler of all time.
Now, you can doubt me, and we'll close this thing off since we've been going off for a while, man. It's almost time to go home.
Ooh, look at that. Yeah, he's got to go home and take care of that.
Yeah, I got one in the chamber. You can doubt me, you know what I mean? But you can check the records. And another one you can talk to is Daphne. I can't remember what name they had her wrestle as. Did they have her wrestle as Daphne?
I believe she was Daphne. In TNA, I think she was Daphne.
We'll go into that a whole nother time. But I knew Daphne in passing when I was doing WCW stuff. I was gone from the company when Daphne came in. She came in right, it's not that bad. When she came in,
I'm sitting here.
When she came in right after I left. But Daphne had a lawsuit because they hurt her and she was injured and it could have been prevented. But Daphne knows via her attorney that won that lawsuit with the Tennessee Labor Board that finally got Daphne's medical bills paid and her paid from that injury from Impact Wrestling coming in that shitty ass guarantee. Kristen Garston, Daphne knows I was instrumental giving Christian and that firm a lot of inside skinny and how to put a suit together to win that, and he's thanked me a lot, and she has as well. But if you want to, check those. This stuff is very easy to track. I'm not making up false claims, and I feel very good having daughters, 3 daughters, God's got a sense of humor, for being a part of what has made the women's movement, the start at least anyway, with Dutch. Close this thing.
And we'll have to sit down one day and just not even worry about the time and just go through your whole experience, front to back, cover to cover, working for TNA, because I know there's a lot more stuff that we could cover on.
Oh.
But for right now, folks,
let me just say, one of the biggest fucking disappointments of my life was with the way that shit played out.
Well, and speaking as a fan, because I started watching shortly before you came in around that 2006 era. I started watching in late 2005. I thought for sure, I was willing to put money on the fact that that company was going to become legitimate competition for WWE. And there was a time I was more of a TNA fan than I was of a WWE fan, and it broke my heart to see what happened to it.
Well, in 2006 and 2007, the ratings don't lie. We were averaging, I think it was a 1-2.
Yeah.
You know? And we didn't have to fucking mention WWE or hire their cast-offs. Like I said, the Knockouts and Joe versus fucking AJ were higher rated for a lot less money. You know? And look where Joe and AJ are now, fast forward. It's proof. The proof was in the pudding. The Carters had no fucking clue what to do with AJ or Samoa Joe.
No, and when they lost AJ, especially, that was the end of the company as far as that was the end of TNA wrestling as far as I'm concerned. Because like you said, they wanted to build that whole place around him, and they did.
Jarrett's exact words, Randy, you know AJ Styles. Times are changing. People want to see that athleticism, and he's the guy we're going to build this company around. That was before they named it. So close this son of a bitch now so we can go home and eat and all that happy horse. And I can go to the bathroom.
Well, folks, we again want to thank you for tuning in. Again, a lot of difficult subjects were covered in this podcast. We thank you for watching all the way through. But again, it's difficult to talk about, but somebody has to talk about it. We didn't name names, so if anybody... Not yet. So if anybody gets uppity about this and gets offended, well...
It gets a little panties in a twist.
You're going to have to examine why... You're going to have to examine, if we're not naming names, you know, who does the shoe fit? And, you know, and if you guys, as always...
And again, anybody that oversells it, if they oversell it, maybe they should look that way.
Yeah, and as always...
Say, what, if you didn't do anything wrong, why are you so fucking defensive? My folks used to say that, I'd be like, fuck.
You know? And again, we say it every time. If you guys want to interact with us about these subjects, if you have questions or if you feel like you have competing information that you want to bring to the table, this is an open forum. If you're on Patreon, leave us a comment. If you're on YouTube, leave us a comment below. Let us know your thoughts. We want to hear from you. We want to get you guys in on these discussions. I mean, this guy's got 32 years in the business, but that's not saying he's the fountain of, it's not saying he's the fountain of all knowledge. So if you guys...
No, but I've been in a lot of places with a lot of people.
Yeah. So if you guys want to ask...
And I've been sober that whole time. I've been sober coming up on 39 years. So while everybody else was out partying, getting fucked up and blown out of their minds, you know, I was sober watching every fucking thing. Yeah.
So by all means, interact with us. Whether you agree, whether you disagree, whether you have questions, leave us a comment below. And as always, folks, until this pandemic is over, until they lift this lockdown or shelter-in-place order, we are still going to be bringing you premier pro wrestling content that you can find via our streaming services. Go to YouTube, go to premierprowrestling.com, click the on-demand link. Again, $4.99 per month for that, and your first 2 weeks are free. Go to prowrestlingtees.com/premierprowrestling. That link too is on our website. You can shop from our catalog of PPW t-shirts. We've got one for, I think, just about everybody on the roster at this point.
One coming for Inestra. I saw the design last night. It looks real cool.
And I'm sure he's going to love to flaunt that. And Patreon, folks, Patreon. We thank you folks out there who are supporting us on Patreon. Remember, 3 different tiers you can choose from: $1, $3, and $5. The higher you go, the more you get. Remember, folks, it's patreon.com/premierprowrestling. That's all you got to put into your browser. You can sign up today and start getting access to this exclusive content. And we want to, again, folks, remind everyone that even though our doors are closed, we will kick back off as soon as the Illinois state government says that we're able to. So keep tabs on all of our social media, particularly our Facebook, for announcements on when we're going to get our live tapings rolling again.
And Until next week, have good mosh pitting.
And be safe, folks.